That led to the news coming out, and some of the video that they captured, it actually showed there was a piece of plastic wrapped around the torso of one of the beaver. So they did a rescue on that beaver. We were able to capture it after about 5 or 6 nights, and it turned out that the beaver was healthy, a female, and she was pregnant. And so time moved forward, and they basically meandered back into nature, and we would see signs of them where they were chewing down bushes and small trees along Los Gatos Creek, and then we found them again in Campbell, near Creekside. And so the cool thing about the beaver were that you had a colony of beaver, not just one, but a family and an extended family. And then from that family, you had beaver that were actually leaving and taking floodwaters each season and moving out and going to other places. We saw them then in Coyote Creek. We saw them going up the peninsula. So they started finding new areas to populate. And so now you have them in many of the waterways down here in the South Bay. We've got that going on. But the other cool thing, and this is timely because right now the salmon are coming in. So Josh, why don't you click on this? This is just kind of a collage of different things, and wanted to talk about some of the things that you see here. That as you can see, the tail on that fish is really white. That's a female. And the reason that it's white is because the female gets on her side and will basically scoop out all of the silt from the rocks and build a large nest, a rock nest. And then she'll find a suitor, and they will spawn on that. And this is one of the larger carcasses that we found. We can't actually hook and catch those fish. They have to be dead, and then we basically are taking samples from the fish. We'll be talking about that later, but see how polished those rocks are? So that's a female that's on her red, and this is just another fish. Someone's standing on a log or something getting that video.
And those pictures are from right here.
Yes, yes. So the range of the fish are, they come in the main stem of the Guadalupe from the bay. They're actually coming under the Golden Gate Bridge, coming down through the bay, and then moving into our waterway, the Guadalupe. We've also seen them on Coyote Creek, Santa Tomas Aquino Creek. The healthiest and best opportunity for them is on the Guadalupe. And then they'll come in, half of the fish will move up Los Gatos Creek, the other half will go to the back end of the valley and go up Alamedas Creek, and will spawn below the dam that's behind Valley Water. There's a flashboard dam, and they have a fish ladder that goes up behind it. So this is right near the 17 freeway at Los Gatos Creek on Poplar. So right near Campbell Avenue. And so there was a whole group of fish that were just sort of set up in there, but these were just gigantic fish and just really colorful as you can see. So we'll chase these fish and wait for them to expire, and then where's Aaron? Aaron was like lifting that one fish up with a pitchfork, not the pitchfork, with a rake. And so we're seeing fish in that range, just monster fish, down to the smaller variety. So that's a quick thing on the salmon. We're going to be moving further in and talking about more of that, but I'm going to turn this over to Josh.
I'm Josh Lopez. I'm one of the event coordinators for South 18 Creeks Coalition. If you've been to any of our events, you probably see me running around with a camera, taking pictures and videos of the event. So we've been in operation since 2013, and I've been with the organization since 2019. I want to thank anyone that has ever come to any of the 510 cleanups we've had over the 12 years that we've been doing this. Thank you all. With over 30,000 hours donated through volunteer hours to our mission of reclaiming, restoring, and revitalizing the local watershed, it's made a really big difference and an impact. We wouldn't be able to remove over 832 tons of trash from the waterway without the supportive community that we have here in San Jose. So thank you, anybody that's ever volunteered to our events. Again, it really means a lot to us. Aside from that, you'll see 2,000 hours of vegetation work. That's through a basic plant removal project that we've been doing during the dry season of the year here in San Jose. But we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So when I joined the South Bay Creeks Coalition, there was already a growing homeless population and housing crisis here in San Jose. But in 2020, all these underlying inequalities really became apparent all over the city. And if you were to visit any of our parks or trails, it would be very obvious some of the issues going on with our waterways. So, as my role as an event coordinator, I also have to look for sites that we do these cleanups in. So a lot of the times I'm going around the waterways looking for enough trash in our parks, creeks, and trails to basically set up these events, 2 hours events. So I'm looking for 2 hours worth of trash. And in this time period, I got to see the development of these camps unfold. I got to see them grow and change, and also provide different amenities to the populations that were using our waterways to live in. And this issue touches a bunch of different problems that happen in the city. But for our sake, the people that live in our rivers and creeks or choose these as their homes, they're looking for a safe place to go. But unfortunately, our rivers and creeks aren't designed to handle this type of human activity. In some of these areas, there's large fires that break out. There's things like crime happening in some of these areas. So when we're out there, we're mostly focusing on trash, but we also become witness to some of the things that are happening. And the city has been doing a lot of work trying to change this. And right here, you can see a poll that was done. So in 2020, we were estimating that we reached around 6,000 homeless individuals in our streets and our waterways. And like I said, the city's been doing different things to try to approach this problem. Everything from temporary shelters to services like mental health services. And we know that this approach isn't perfect, but it is making an impact on our waterways. Like I said, now that I go out and look for sites, it's sometimes a little bit, I'm looking for 2 hours worth of trash to make an event, right? But because of all the efforts that the city has been doing, it's been a little bit harder and harder to find sites that are readily available for these events. So we stop going for the low-hanging fruit, and we have to look for sites that are more off the beaten path. And that includes trash. It's a little bit harder to remove. So in the past, this is kind of what our sites look like. This is over by Hamilton Place. It's in between Gossip Avenue and Lee Avenue. And this area was a large encampment even before I was hired. So it had been going on for around 5 to 6 years. And around in 2024, this area got designated as a water resource protection zone. Through the efforts of Valley Water in the city. So Valley Water, they're responsible for a lot of our rivers and creeks, and they have to do this in partnership with the city, right? So there's a lot of back and forth that goes on, and this is why sometimes it can take a while for us to see changes in the waterways. So like I mentioned, this encampment was going on for 5 to 6 years, and the people that were living there, people have to modify these areas to make them habitable. Like I said, these areas aren't designed for the human activity that's been going on there. So what people would do is they would dig into the banks of the rivers and creeks. They would flatten the area out so that when you have a flat area, you put like a tent, or you can build structures. And as you can see here, there are some of the structures in the back. I wish you guys could see an actual tour of the area. It was pretty impressive, and it was quite expansive. But the city and Valley Water have started designating these areas to protect environmentally sensitive parts of our rivers and creeks, but it's also to protect the property that Valley Water takes care of, and that includes our dam system. So, moving on to the next slide. So, this area right here, this area is a place that we've visited around 5 times this year, but we've been here plenty of times before that. Like I mentioned before, when I got hired, a lot of these encampments were already pretty expansive, and this place was one of those places too. So the little brick structure up there, that's San Carlos Avenue. And the top pictures, that's where the encampments were at. As you can see, people had enough time to build actual little homes, little, somewhat like, you could call them like little apartments. And we have a video on YouTube where you can see the extent of these, what was left over of these encampments when we were there. You can see how the banks have been flattened out completely. The bottoms of those areas have been reinforced with different things like bricks, concrete, all basically to just make it easier to build on and basically have provide a home for people that are using that area. But this area, this year, it was designated a water resource protection zone, and the city abated it. So for the first time, we were able to see this area empty of people. And if you go to the other side of the river, or the other side of the bridge, you would see more camps that have been popping up after this left. So it's always a continuing process for this stuff. But in 2023, we did an interview with the mayor during one of our events. We were cleaning up on Delmas Avenue right in front of the staff center. And he actually described the pilot program of what's going on now. And in this interview, he will describe more of what this program is about.
Hey, I'm doing great. We're out here along the Creek today with the South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition, just pulling a lot of trash out and actually working with some of our unhoused neighbors who are actually helping out to keep the area clean. But there's a lot of trash there, which obviously is bad for the ecosystem, and so it's great to see so many volunteers out.
Okay, where would you say you're at right now?
We are right along the Los Gatos Creek downtown, right at the confluence with the Guadalupe.
Okay. So we're just going to ask you a few questions. It's mainly about the water resource protection areas. So what are your impressions of the RAP proposed in collaboration with Valley Water and the city?
Yeah, so this is something that I've been working on for a few years now, which has been this idea that when we clear an area of encampments and find housing for people, we need to preserve our progress. And it's really important that we protect our watershed in particular. So the idea here with the quick build site that we are building at Cherry Ave is to build about 100 units for people who are currently homeless, help them transition into those sites, and then along that stretch of the creek from Blossom Hill Road up to Capitol Expressway, along the creek there, keep that area free of encampments. And so we'll post signs, we will rapidly abate if folks try to re-encamp, and we'll make clear that this is a water resource protection zone, but that we've provided housing for everyone who's been encamped along the creek there. And I think the only strategy going forward as a city is to expand shelter, affordable housing, inpatient treatment centers, create options for people, and then transition people out of encampments and not allow those areas to become re-encamped. We're just seeing too much environmental destruction. We're seeing plastics and all kinds of toxic chemicals go down the creeks, out into the bay. We're leaving a real crisis for our kids and grandkids if we don't get a better handle on this.
Absolutely.
Okay. So up next, we also did. So up next, there's going to be an interview with a homeless individual that we've worked with a lot in the past. His name is Mike Ponce de Leon, and during that event, we also interviewed him to get what he thinks about the WRPC program. So at the time of the interview, he was homeless, but as of now, he has found housing through the services that the city has been providing him. And like I mentioned, we worked with Mike in the past, not just during our cleanup events, but also during our salmon monitoring season. He's an avid fisherman, so he's really interested in trying to get help for the salmon here in San Jose. So around this time, we usually meet up with him and he'll join us during our monitoring. And here's the interview.
All right. So who are you and what's your name?
Michael Guadalupe Ponce. I'm a native from San Jose. I'm homeless at the moment. I've been out here at this spot for 4 years. I've been homeless for 8. And I love the creeks. I love the fish, and I'm all about preservation and conservation of our water resources.
How are the creeks and homelessness linked?
Well, the creeks provide a place for shelter, or a place to reside in, and because there's not too many people to tell you anything what to do and stuff like that, and so the creeks and the rivers draw the homeless, and then but in the same retrospect, they're just tearing it up too. They have no regard for the environment or the waterways, which is really important. So I guess education is going to make a big difference, and then getting the homeless involved would be really, really good.
Yeah. How do you feel about the water resource protection area?
I think it's a good idea. I guess I have to see it in action before to see, because sometimes they do sometimes more damage than good, by redirecting water or doing stuff like that. So I'd have to see it to see. It's a good idea, but I want to see it in action, and then get involved in it a little bit more and see how it goes. But the mayor's idea is a good idea.
Okay, so moving forward, in 2024, the city broke ground at Cherry Avenue and started building emergency interim housing. This was one of the many sites that had been chosen for temporary housing in the city, and this site is also part of the water resource protection zone and had also been a very popular area for encampments. It suffered the same damage that I had showed earlier from the previous encampment. So there was people digging into the banks, terracing them, and basically creating a lot of erosion, as well as adding a bunch of trash to the area. Now this area under the 85 freeway is very important to us because the riverbed there is very good for salmon spawning. And in the past couple of years, we've seen salmon go to that area looking for a good place to make nests. And this is one of the few areas that is good for that activity before you hit the fish ladder that's in between Blossom Hill and Coleman Avenue. The salmon use this corridor to get to Alamitos Creek, where there's even better conditions for making nests and laying eggs. So, unfortunately, some years the fish ladder is not working at full capacity, so the salmon can't fully get over. Some of them get stuck and have to find another option to spawn at. So, removing and, basically just moving the encampments from the waterway is one of the better options for the salmon to still have a chance to spawn in this section of the Guadalupe River. So this is basically what the housing site looks like right now. I took these pictures in October, so it still isn't fully operational, but it should come online this next year, actually.
December.
December, okay, yes. How's it going? Thank you. As mentioned before, these strategies are not perfect, but we've seen the impact, a positive impact on our waterways. Like I said, I'm having a harder time finding sites to clean up, especially for 2 hours. So it's making some positive impact. So does anybody have any questions before I switch topics? Sorry.
All right, right over there, Stevens Creek kind of goes through, and there's a lot that actually goes through there, apparently, and there was like a big old influx, which is super awesome. However, there was one part of it that I always wondered, because I lived above the Stevens Creek area dam, and nothing would go up there. But it seemed like they were doing a pretty good job, but you couldn't fish or anything in that because of the heavy metals and everything else. How is that little traversing spot looking these days? And what can be done to make it better for us and the fish?
Specifically on under the 85 freeway? Or are you talking about
85 freeway? No, I'm talking Stevens Creek, Stevens Canyon, and essentially Hotel Expressway, we wouldn't change the names, but up a different way, but it's the same kind of pathway, it's not the Los Gatos Creek.
So on
So we might have cut it off, and that is absolutely a thing, but I am curious.
So on Stevens Creek, I know they can't get past a certain point there because there's a giant wall that they would have to go over. And in order for them to go over that, there has to be enough water in the river or in Stevens Creek for them to bypass that. And there's 2 weirs or big walls they have to go over. I think the first one is on Scott, and then the next one is I'm forgetting the street exactly, but there's 2 series of walls that they have to cross over.
You're talking San Tomas Pequeno though?
Oh, I think yeah, he's talking about.
So yeah, Stevens Creek is kind of out of our range. Our focus is on the Guadalupe, and on occasion we'll do a little bit of work on Coyote Creek, and then when the salmon are coming in, we'll go over to San Tomas Pequeno, and there are challenges for the fish on all of these waterways. You talked about one of the things, pollutants. It's a legacy issue because of all of the, mercury and, in the 1850s, they extracted a lot out and then left these areas for quicksilver. You know, they've left those in waterways. The good thing about the salmon are they're not residents of the waterway long term. They come in, they spend 90 days incubating the young, then they leave that nest and will stay in the waterway for another 90 days, and then they're off to the ocean for 2 to 3 years. Now bass, they're in there long term, so I wouldn't eat the bass and whatnot. That would not be a target fish for dinner. Hopefully that helped.
You understood. Hey, thanks for giving the rundown on it. That's awesome. That's what I was looking for, and I can't believe the meeting. So hey, points on you, buddy. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay. So our waterways have a variety of challenges facing them, but one of them is the overabundance of invasive plants in our waterways. And these plants are not native to this area. Plants that are invasive, they're not native to the area, and they've evolved somewhere else and developed adaptations that sometimes outcompete the native plants that we have here. So we started a project through a grant to remove invasive plants from the Los Gatos Creek and the Willow Glen area. And we started the project in 2019. And we focused on a list of different invasive plants like Cascadian or Himalayan blueberry or blackberry. But the main target of the project was Arundo gonax. And I know the name sounds a little unorthodox, but you guys have seen this plant in the waterway. It looks like bamboo. So if you guys see any bamboo stalks in our water, in our rivers and creeks, it's most likely Arundo gonax. So this plant is really invasive. It's rhizomous, so it creates a root ball, and it's not like the spongy roots that native plants have here, so it doesn't really help with erosion. It actually increases the erosion in our waterways. Also, if those little rhizome pieces break off and it goes downstream, it'll just sprout up again. This plant doesn't have any natural predators, no other animals really like eating it, and it can also have an allelopathic effect where it stunts the plants that are surrounding it. So it's a really bad thing, and it took a lot of work to get a lot of it out. So the site covers 10 acres from Cove Avenue to Cherry Avenue, so it's a pretty expensive site, and 4 acres of that is all invasive plants. So we had, to say the least, we had our work cut out for us. The timeline for the project was from 2019 to 2024, but due to COVID and the 2020 slowdown, you could say we got a pretty late start. So we actually started in 2023. And if you guys came out to one of those events, you guys know that those events were a lot of work. We worked with a bunch of different people to try to get this done. We worked with the city. We worked with ecological concerns to guide us and teach us what to cut, how to cut, and when to do it. And we also had a couple of people that set up events for like corporations. So we had Amazon help us out. We had the mayor come to our events. We worked with the Rotary to do some of this, and we also worked with some schools like Harvard School to get this done. But for this project, ultimately our aim was to revitalize our watershed to make it more hospitable to the wildlife that we have here in San Jose. And I know we advocate mostly for salmon, but other wildlife benefits from our work. Other wildlife like beaver. And here is Steve talked about the colony that lives here in Los Gatos.
I get all the fun information. So,
I'll be back.
so this was a beaver sighting. I was on the bike trail. So where Campbell Avenue is in San Tomasino, it's in that stretch. And so we once again have a colony of beaver in there. So we set up 2 cameras in this area, and you have like a mom, it looks like, and then the one in the background is more of like an adolescent beaver, so it's not full grown. And so we put the videos out for a period of 2 weeks. The one on the left was eating something that looked like it was a cotton ball. You could see through it, and it's the anise plant. And we were trying to like map to what it was eating right at this moment. But you can see the other camera is lighting up that beaver. So sort of setting up the shot, and then coming out there in the morning, I get up at before the crack of dawn, flying down to the area, swap out the SIM cards and batteries, put it back in motion, and then go home and see what we've actually caught. But this section has been very productive as far as beaver. Now there's that cotton ball that I'm talking about, kind of eating. It looks like a cotton candy. That's what I'm sort of referring to. We've also seen brand new beaver tip. And so here's one walking on the branch back towards the camera, and you can see the other one in the background. But we had about 7 beaver in this colony at the time. And so one of them gave birth, and we were catching video of the beaver. It had to have been the body this long with the tail about this long. And so we had the community help us in naming it. And so they were coming up with Sawdust and Chip and everything, and ended up with Justin Beaver. So that was the name that was selected. So we really kind of followed them all the way up Los Gatos Creek and the main stem of the Guadalupe. They're all the way down towards the bay, and then they are in the downtown corridor. Where we've been working on the port, we've seen the roots chewed up, so we know that they're in that area as well. And so looking for signs where they've been chewing, and then the flip side is, get the cameras out and see what we can capture. But there were just some really nice video that we're catching at this one site. So next slide. One of the issues that we ran into was this guy, this beaver, or this raccoon, would keep coming into the areas where we had the camera and knocking it over. So once the raccoon found it, it was game over. This would be the shot. So I think he was waving the camera as he walked away. But they all get along. They don't get along without me, but they were you've got skunk, you have opossum, you have beaver. We've actually had a mountain lion sighted along the waterway, and we've also had deer spend time along the waterway. They use these waterways as a highway to go up and down, and so it is amazing that the beaver have domesticated into this area, because you have a bike trail on one side in the 17th freeway. On the other side, you have another bike trail, and you have all sorts of people walking. When I was down there early in the morning, I could hear people walking, exercising in the morning, and hear them talking. And so it is kind of cool how everybody sort of gets along. So next one.
Okay. So next, So in July, me and my coworker Jordan, we were out on Los Gatos Creek. And we actually got to see a pretty recent sighting of a beaver he had made a dam over by Creekside. And there's some of the pictures inside in there. This is the most recent sighting that we've seen.
That dam is still there too.
Yes, and he had a little den and area there, and he's still living there.
And it's really tough. When you start thinking about it, you're seeing some pretty good video and pictures. I'm envious of wildlife photographers after going through this, because, this one beaver that's over at Creekside, we had Apple out, and Apple was showing them some of the trees that had been chewed up, and said there are beaver here, but typically they're nocturnal. You won't see them during the day. And so we're working, and one of the guys goes, "There's a beaver!" So I run over thinking it's not going to be a beaver. And there was a beaver on the other side of the stream staring at me. It was all wet from just jumping out of the water. So I said the next day, I'm like, I'm going to be here because he's in that hole. I can see him right now, and I'm going to get video of him. So I sat there for like 4 hours. And finally the sun turned enough to where I could see into that hole, and he wasn't there. So, it's all about the timing.
Would you be able to talk about these next 3 slides?
Let's do it, whatever.
Thursday.
So you can see a bunch of people in the background. The salmon are coming in, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a higher volume of fish coming in. And so each year we invite the public to come down with one of our groups. We have invites that we put up on Eventbrite. We're probably going to focus some of the slots to the people that are in this room, because typically when we set it up, we have people that just dive on all of the open slots. We probably will keep one of them open, but timing, it'll probably be in 2 weeks when we'll do this, and then maybe the week after that. But typically what we'll do is we'll have 3 of these showings in a Saturday, and then 3 on the Sunday, and then repeat that the next weekend. So a lot of time spent with people so they can see where the fish are, the activities of the fish. Typically we'll have a carcass and we can sort of share some of the anatomy of those fish, because we have actually fish that are coming into our stream, and then we have wild fish. And we're all about the wild fish. I mean, if we can determine that we have a lot of wild fish, then that's something, that we might be able to see our fish prioritized at a higher level. And we're gonna have Rick Landman talking in one of these videos in a second. But, so we have these different Saturday and Sunday meetups. Next slide. So this is a little bit on the historical aspect, and Rick will be talking about this as well. But you can see the size of these fish. I mean, the bounty of these fish, 40, 50 years ago, in the strategy, it was sort of like fishing until they're extinct. And so now you're starting to see the recovery of these fish, and it's been slow. I mean, if you look at some of the other waterways, they basically, the run collapsed. And so now we're starting to see it go up in the other direction. We're seeing increases in fish. 500 fish 2 years ago, and about 600 fish this last year. And so if we get the fish population up to about 2,000 fish, we feel that we have a sustainable, run of salmon, and something like fishing for the fish could be, something that could work in. Next slide. Yes.
So you have the beavers.
Yes.
Which naturally want to build dams.
Yep.
And you have the fish that want to come through the waterways.
Correct.
How do those work together? We went to one of these down by Physical Beach. They were talking about the beavers building all these dams.
Yep.
And stopping
Water.
the fish between what they need to do.
That's kind of what we've seen at Creekside. There's been a couple beaver dams that have been created, and the fish can generally get over them, leap over them, and that's what they'll do, and they'll just move up further up the waterway, and it may take having more water flow through. At the Willow Glen Trestle, we had a monster-sized, thicket of branches and ivy vines, all this sort of thing, and I looked at that and I go, these fish can't get up through this. And then lo and behold, like a week later, there was a dozen fish up, up near the 17 freeway. So they can typically get through. But sometimes they can't, and they'll go downstream and find a suitable place to spawn. Yeah. Yeah.
Adding to her point, which is awesome. I live at the very end of Stevens Canyon Road, which is Stevens Creek, legit creek that kind of comes down from the mountain. And the neighbors around there are very, very pro everything about getting these things kind of going. So between my father-in-law, they would absolutely love to have a little bit of a litter of beavers there in the big old well of in the creek. How do we encourage stuff like that when you have the reservoir right there, which is probably more of the challenging part because it keeps right into the reservoir. But above stream, that is some pretty nice water.
So I know that they're above Lexington Reservoir, some of those little trips. So you might find, beaver up in your woods, because they are, as the population expands, then you have them moving into newer zones where they can settle.
Well,
So
you actually drop it hey, if you can capture a beaver family or something and bring them over, we'll take care of them.
actually, that's what
No, but the environment is right for it, and it's stuck in my head. That's absolutely awesome. That it might be a really good place to put a couple of them, as there is plentiful food and a relatively conducive environment, but also having sand just jump up would be kind of extra awesome.
The nice thing about our waterways down here is that you have large reservoirs holding water. So, the drought situation or having, turn off the water completely, that's something that can get us through, through the summers. Stevens Creek's reservoir is a smaller reservoir. I don't know how it does, from, spring to like fall, if the water is like completely empty and it's dry. It stays year round?
Yeah, it stays pretty consistent.
Okay. So
They
this,
say it has like heavy metals and everything that's right in there from the previous, I don't know, human interaction. But overall, all of the potential is also right there. It runs tangential to like Los Gatos Creek. It's the same kind of a downdraft. So worth exploring if you haven't. And that's my singular point. And also if you have a beaver to adopt, I think I
so this was, on the right, those are Valley Water employees, and there was like a surprise. They discovered that they had salmon. And so in the beginning, there was a lot of excitement. And so this was, they were basically pinning them and kind of getting them into an area where they were measuring and taking samples off the fish, this sort of thing. And then on the left is a survey, I think it was done by NOAA. And it was in the storm water area. They had to assess what was going to be the impact of, from like a flooding standpoint with work that they were going to do that they have done. And back in the 80s, I guess we had the river overflowed and went into the businesses in downtown. And so people were saying, we've got to come up with a better plan here. And so now you have bypasses that shift some of the water away from the main stem. There's also a pumping station that when the water gets all the way down towards the estuary, they'll pump water back up into an empty channel, and that will increase the capacity of water that can be received by the bay and the estuary. So there are things that have been going on. And so what they did on the left, that was basically a survey. They were looking at the reds, the nests that were in that corridor. So it would be from like Virginia Street down to St. John's, kind of in that area. And it was something like 500 nests that they found. So when you start adding those up and talking about where you can't get fish to, because the main stem of the Guadalupe near Capital Expressway had a barrier that the fish couldn't get through. So the length of stream that they had to work with went to, I think it was Capital Expressway. And that was the thing that got me going. Roger Castillo, who's been following salmon, and I don't know if it's a familiar name to you, but he was near the pumping station that's at Montague, and it was one of the first times that they had set the thing off, and it scoured the land below where the water was, just blasting out. And he was walking his dog and came upon a tusk, and went to San Jose State, got a professor out, and they said, "This is a mammoth." So he found a woolly mammoth at Montague. So if you're on the trail or you're going on Montague and you look over to the side, they now have a gigantic metal mammoth, and it's done in like sections of metal, but it then mimics a mammoth full size. So next slide.
Okay, so before we go any further, we're going to watch a 2-minute video on the life cycle of salmon, just to bring everybody up to speed on kind of what the salmon go through to get here. And then after that, we'll be followed by our interview with Rick Landman. He is a physician scientist that has helped to shape our research and procedures for the samples that we take from the salmon in water.
After spending several years in the open ocean, feeding and growing, these salmon are returning home. And what they're bringing back benefits an entire ecosystem. Along the west coast of North America, heavy autumn rains have transformed small streams into roaring rivers, allowing millions of salmon to migrate inland in order to spawn. After spending years in the open ocean, these fish return to their natal streams, where they were born. It's thought that salmon navigate using the Earth's magnetic field and are able to recognize the smell of their home stream, allowing them to return within meters of where they emerged from their egg. They return to their natal stream because they know it's a great place to spawn, and subsequently don't spend unnecessary time and energy searching for a mate or adequate spawning habitat. As salmon leave the ocean and enter freshwater, they stop feeding and begin deriving all their energy from stored fats. During the salmon's upriver migration, their bodies undergo distinct physical transformations. Their silver-blue scales are replaced with bright reds, greens, and purples, and males develop a prominent hump and hooked jaw. These salmon who have survived to return home have beaten insurmountable odds. A single female salmon lays roughly 4,000 eggs. However, after hatching and facing endless obstacles and constant predation while migrating downriver, then traversing the ocean for several years and migrating back upriver, an average of only 2 will return to create the next generation. After traveling upwards of 1,000 kilometers inland to spawn, the lives of these salmon come to an end. But even in death, this keystone species continues to give. An adult salmon returning to spawn contains roughly 130 grams of nitrogen and 20 grams of phosphorus. These nutrients greatly benefit the ecosystem surrounding salmon-bearing waterways. Research has shown that vegetation along the banks of salmon-bearing waterways grow over 3 times faster than rivers without salmon. For example, a Sitka spruce only requires 86 years rather than the usual 300 years to grow to a thickness of 50 centimeters. The relationship between salmon and trees goes even further. Consider how the roots of vegetation grip and hold soil in place. During the heavy rains needed for salmon to navigate these streams, the roots of stream-side trees and undergrowth vegetation prevent rainwater from eroding soil and introducing sediment into the waterway, which is incredibly important as excessive sedimentation is lethal for salmon eggs. It's not only the tree's roots that benefit salmon. The shadows cast by these towering giants cloak the stream and prevent the sun's rays from warming the water to temperatures deadly for any life stage of salmon, ensuring the survival of the next generation and reinforcing that salmon need trees and trees need salmon.
You guys can see salmon are very good parents, right?
Yeah, I'm Rick Landman. I'm a physician scientist, retired about 5 years ago. I used to do oncology and genomics. Now I do historical ecology. That is, I research the historical flora and fauna of California and our region in particular. I live on Adobe Creek, which we're standing in right now, from El Camino Real to the bay. As you can see, it's a concrete trapezoidal culvert. This is to speed floodwater out. Unfortunately, it makes it impassable for steelhead to come up. Other rivers, like the Guadalupe River, the dams are far enough up that steelhead and Chinook salmon use those streams. And I'm very excited to watch over the last several decades the Chinook salmon population in the Guadalupe River watershed, which includes Los Gatos Creek, Guadalupe Creek, and Alamedas Creek, to watch the salmon population continue to rise. Every winter, December, January, we get fall-run Chinook salmon running up this system and spawning. For a long time, we were told these are just lost hatchery fish. They would raise Chinook salmon in Central Valley hatcheries. In the drought years in particular, they didn't have enough water for them to swim downstream, so they would take them in trucks and dump them in the bay. Those hatchery salmon don't know where they were born. They don't know where their natal stream is. So they just use whatever, they stray to whatever stream they could use. Genetic studies of our Guadalupe River watershed salmon show, in fact, that most of the salmon are hatchery fish, hatchery strays by genetics. But 2 of the 3 studies also showed that some were wild strays. One study showed some of the fish were Russian River genetics in the Guadalupe River. So they had strayed from the Russian River, which is supposed to be the southern limit for California coastal Chinook salmon. But here they are further south in the Guadalupe River. Another study showed that some of our Guadalupe River Chinook had lower Columbia River genetics. So Chinook salmon stray. Most of them go back to the stream where they were born, their natal stream, but some stray. And it's a good strategy evolutionarily, because your stream might dry up, there might be a wildfire, it might silt up, or some obstruction. So a small percentage use different streams. I was told these Chinook salmon can't be native, and all we could find in our research was a historical newspaper article from 1904 that said the boys would go out with spears after the winter storms and spear salmon and steelhead in the pools in urban San Jose, in the Guadalupe River, and probably Coyote Creek, but it wasn't clear. Now, it's important that they mention both steelhead and salmon, because a lot of people say, oh, they called them salmon, but they were just large steelhead. Well, they mentioned both. So this was intriguing. Kenneth Gobele, a PhD archaeologist, one of perhaps the foremost ichthyofaunal archaeologists, an archaeologist who specializes in fish remains, fish bones, basically, said, Rick, we have a lot of vertebrae from salmonids from the Mission Santa Clara, right on the Guadalupe River. Just it used to be Mission Creek, a short tributary to the Guadalupe River main stem. Very close, less than a mile away. We can't tell from the vertebrae whether these are large steelhead or medium or small Chinook salmon. This is circa 1800. We did an ancient DNA study of those bones. We published that study in 2021. We found 3 Chinook salmon, 3 different Chinook salmon, circa 1800, from the Mission Santa Clara bones that were there. So that was the first physical proof that Chinook salmon were historically native to the Guadalupe River watershed. More recently, Steve Holmes, Brian Allais, PhD, super helpful, and South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition started collecting spawned out adult carcasses, eye lenses, and ear bones, otoliths, for isotope studies. Let's talk about isotopes for a minute. What we wanted to find out was, were any of these salmon that we have coming back and spawning, and that reached about 600 Chinook salmon coming up the Guadalupe River last year, were any of them born there? Or were they just newly coming in from other streams, wild strays, or from hatchery strays? The first study, looking at the eye lenses, these eye lenses have lenses like tree rings. The innermost eye lens layer represents the environment in which they were born. And they have different sulfur 34 versus sulfur 32 isotopes. Turns out hatchery fish are fed fish meal collected by nets in the open ocean. The ocean has a much higher sulfur 34 isotope. Chinook that are born in rivers and streams don't have as much sulfur 34. They have more of the regular sulfur 32. So South Bay Clean Creeks collects literally hundreds of fish from the late 20 teens to now. Harvest the eye lenses from the spawned out adults. We send them to UC Davis to the radioisotope laboratory. And the first series of, I think, 3 years, we find 10 that were born in the wild by the sulfur isotope. The rest were born in hatcheries. So now we selected down those 10, and we turn to the otolith. And now we're going to look not at sulfur isotopes, but strontium isotopes. Strontium is right below calcium in the periodic table. Otolith is basically a little bone rich in calcium. Well, strontium also gets in there. Each river or stream has a different strontium isotope ratio. These have been mapped out for the rivers of the Central Valley by UC Davis. And you can tell from the innermost ear bone layer, from that strontium isotope, does it match the strontium isotope of the water from that river? All the fish in that river, they'll live in that river, their first year, their innermost otolith has that strontium ratio. The water itself has that strontium ratio. So South Bay Clean Creeks collected water specimens from 10 different reaches in the Guadalupe watershed system. And we established with UC Davis the strontium isotope signature of the Guadalupe River watershed. It's a little bit complicated because we have a little water mixing in that gets shipped in from San Luis Reservoir and others, but pretty clear and pretty different from all of the Central Valley rivers except the Tuolumne, where it overlaps. Of the 10 fish from the eye lenses that we knew were wild born, one of them was born in the Guadalupe River by the strontium isotope ratio. There's 2 or 3 others where we couldn't tell if it was Tuolumne or Guad. But this is the first physical proof. We haven't published it yet. And I think we should probably collect more specimens to see if the number is going to increase over time. But it's the first physical evidence. We had a Chinook salmon born in San Jose, returning to San Jose. They spend about 3 years in the ocean, sometimes 4, 5, 6 years. And then they come back to spawn. And of course, they die after they spawn. Really exciting data. And working with Malte Wilmus, who was at UC Davis and UC Santa Cruz and is now at the Fish Institute in Norway, and some of the UC Davis team and Kramer Fish Sciences on this project. But I really want to thank the South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition for their work and all this hard work to collect these priceless specimens. No one has done this before. They've done it on Puta Creek and Central Valley, but nobody's done this in Bay Area tributaries. 3 Bay Area tributaries have Chinook runs: Guadalupe River watershed, Napa River watershed, and Walnut Creek. What do those 3 streams or rivers have in common? They have in common a long lower reach that's intertidal. Our salmon don't spend a year in fresh water. They're adapted to go back out in May because we get such a droughty, hot, dry summer. I think they spend time in these lower reaches that are intertidal to get big before they go onto the open ocean, where size matters. If you're not big and you're a little baby salmon smolt and you go to the open ocean, you're going to get eaten. The greatest predictor of survival in the ocean is how big the smolt is when he or she leaves. So I think these systems have long intertidal reaches, is enabling the Chinook salmon population now to come back. I think we have some wild salmon here, swamped by all these hatchery fish. But I don't care. I don't care if they're hatchery fish or wild. I just want our salmon back.
So it was a little bit technical, and it was interesting when we met up with him. He was doing this, and we're thinking, okay, what's up with his grandkids? He was with his grandkids, and he had caught a cold, so he was doing his best to sort of communicate these data points.
Yeah, that was a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, the cleanups that you guys have done that are related towards the transients occupying the Guadalupe River, are the transients returning to those areas that you guys are cleaning up?
In the past, that's one of the biggest issues that we faced, is just the reoccurring cleanups that we have to do in the same areas. But the approach that the city has been doing along with Valley Water is really curved that. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've been having to look for areas that are farther away from the normal spots that we clean up, or look for trash that's a lot harder to remove. So it has been making an impact. So we have been seeing less of the returning.
Has there been any thoughts about trying to work with the city to try and permanently find a solution to keep transients from continuously reoccupying the river?
So that is what the Water Resource Protection Zone is for. This program basically just designates certain areas as environmentally sensitive, and it establishes a no reencampment zone. And that's enforced through the city, through PE, or it's enforced through Valley Water with their security. But that's the most that's been happening, is that they're offering people services like emergency interim shelter or other mental health services to people who really need it.
That'll recreate hospitals for the salmon once they do start to.
Yeah, that's what we were seeing in the past. And it's not just that, there's like barriers that happen, right? And people approach the fish too as they're coming up. They do stop eating in the waterway, but they still have the same vigilance from this place. This is the city's taking. It is making an impact, but obviously these things are
There's a lot of stuff.
yeah.
I come from a little bit above north, up at Santa Cruz Mountains. What can the Santa Cruz Mountains do to aid?
So, obviously every city has their own set of problems, right? I know the city of Santa Cruz has taken great lengths to address their issues as well.
It's more the mountain ranges. It aids Santa Cruz Mountains. That's like Saratoga, it's Cupertino, there's a handful of other places that all kind of fit within that like downdraft of rainflow that feeds into the creeks that I think you're talking about. And how can we assist with that one? But I think it's not a city by city thing so much as a general consensus of what's needed to get these lads and gals disappointing it the way that they need to.
I mean, it's a very big, extensive area, right, the rivers. So we focus mostly in the San Jose area, and I know cities have to kind of do their own due diligence to kind of address these issues in there as well. So far, this is just what San Jose is doing in terms of the Water Resource Protection Zones. We have different groups that also advocate for cleaning up the waterways and parks in general. It's kind of a city by city thing, unfortunately, just because there's so many different organizations that are involved in not just the creeks, but the parks, you have the city, you have Parks and Rec, you have Caltrain, you have all these different organizations that are involved with taking care of these areas, along with the residents who live there too.
Where I come from, it's pretty clear, or like not clear, but you got like clean water and it's coming down, the ways, and adding some of those things, like even like the Atlantic beaver or whatever it was, which looks adorable and awesome. Like, how do we give that more of a spot to just go and dam a few things up?
Well, our organization started with Let's Keep Home. He saw that there was a need, like kind of how you're pointing out, and he just started by going on the trail trying to get people interested. Eventually, he started the coalition, and it kind of snowballed from there. But this effort took one person and just a belief in the concept. But maybe something like that has to take place in the area.
We were at the Salmon conference this last year, and we did a tour on San Lorenzo, and they showed us all the different sections and where they were working. There was a fish ladder in one. There was a stretch where they were going to have to remove a culvert and cement. So I mean, incrementally, it is such a huge problem. All of the things that were done to our waterways under the guise that we were storing water for the humans or whatever the case might be. Now trying to back out of that situation would be billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I think part of when we started, I saw Los Gatos Creek and the Guad having benefits over some of the other waterways. I mean, San Tomas Aquino is basically a cemented, path, and the fish get up on that and they basically die. So it would be very difficult to improve that sort of a corridor. And then when you start getting up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, the fish from, I don't think there's a waterway that allows the fish to get up above the reservoirs. So anything that we could do with the fish, that's where we focus. areas above. On occasion, we'll do cleanups, but we're focused on the lower areas where the fish can get in and spawn. So that's kind of been the priority.
Fair enough. And on your point, my question would be, is there maybe room to kind of like, if there's a safe harbor to be had,
Yeah.
could it go into some of the other waterways, not necessarily for the people themselves, but for, say the feeders, and damage it up. And like I've seen and I've lived on these roads that actually have really well maintained roads, like San Jose roads and airports. They do a fantastic job in some of the more unincorporated areas. And it wouldn't be that much like out of their scope unless that they actually do that, like something like feeders. I don't know if that happens to Sam, and I'm learning as much as everybody else here at the moment on that one. But like perhaps like that is my question. Is there a space for getting folks and then like we might not get the salmon upstream, maybe we get a couple of beavers downstream sort of question.
Well, let's take this offline at the end, because there may be some ideas that we can sort of, discuss at that
I
time.
love that and I appreciate it. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. I don't mean to be very.
No, it's fine. Good questions.
But we are running a little low on time, so I'm just going to kind of go through some of our data slides that we're going to go through. So these are the totals for the past 4 years for our harvest. As you can see, 2023 was a big year for us. This is when we had a series of atmospheric rivers coming through San Jose. We hope this year is going to be as productive as that year. We've already seen a handful of fish in both the Guadalupe River and Los Gatos Creek. And if favorable conditions continue, we should see that big year again. So, like I mentioned, we've already had members monitoring the waterways that are gathering data about everything that they see. So if they see any live fish, nests, or any carcasses, we gather that data and put it up into our data collection tool, basically. So this week we already started putting up no fishing signs. This is just to bring awareness to the salmon run here in San Jose, and to let people know that if you see anybody fishing in areas that are not designated for fishing, please give a call to CalTIP and report the incident. Again, the fish, the salmon specifically, they aren't going to be eating right now, but they still have the same reflex that if they see a barb or anything close to their face, they'll kind of like bite at it. And that could end up getting the fish caught. We also see things like man-made barriers. In encampments specifically, people would build basically little bridges across the waterway to get across, but it also served as a good place to catch fish. So we would see things like nets, like actual fishing nets, strewn across the river, and we removed those promptly whenever we encountered them.
We were actually walking up the stream. Josh and I were walking up the stream, and we came around the corner, and that middle net was stretched across most of the way. And we said, "Oh wow, that's a net." And then the gentleman from the bushes on the other side said, well, he made some comment, and we said, "Well, you can't have a net out here." And what he had done is he had gone over the valley water fence. They were drying these nets, took one and put it out, and was trying to, obviously trap the fish. There was actually a female nest right above that, and you can kind of see where it's kind of white, right in the waterway in this direction away from that net. So it's a challenge. There's so many people that are touching the waterway, and we are a small motley crew, but the CalTIP, we've seen numbers increase, which is good. That means that they're out there and people are seeing the vehicle, seeing the game warden, and we hope to see less as time goes on.
Are there people other than transients doing things like this, creating those barriers?
Yes. Yeah, there's people out there. Well, I mean, salmon, the fact that we have salmon in San Jose, it's pretty normal, right?
Right.
We're a very urban city, there's like almost a million people over here. The fact that these things come here repeatedly over the years is really impressive. And for some people, they would like to catch fish.
So would you say we need like a heavier presence along the trails, like hiking and whatnot, to be more vigilant and aware of it? Can we notify you guys, or like, hey, I noticed?
Yes. Yeah, so,
Oh, that's what that's for.
Yeah, call him immediately, and then if he can get out, he lives in San Jose near Campbell, so he's pretty, quick on, getting in.
That's ultimately the end goal, is to try and minimize the human.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And it's specifically important within this spawning period, right? So we're just trying to increase the chances of survival for the next generation. So it's not like, obviously, people can fish in our waterways at specific times, specific locations, and all sorts of happen. This is a very specific time, and so we try to advocate as much as we can for the specific time period to let people know that there is an option to use it to but some of the things that we look for specifically to tell which salmon carcasses we should take. So we have a permit to collect samples from the salmon. As Steve mentioned earlier, a percentage of the population in hatchery has their adipose fin cut off. And whenever we see a fish in the wild that has a fin still intact, we get pretty excited, because that means that could be a possible wild fish.
Which is a lower fish there. You can see where the circle is. You can see that little fin. The one on the top is missing, so when the fish are this size, they're basically coming in and snipping that adipose fin off, and then on the left, that's basically a fingerprint. And it looks like a little splinter, but it's a coded wire tag, and it gives information on that fish, and it's put into the fish are this big now. They snip the adipose fin, and then in the forehead they shoot that little sliver, and then we know that that's a wild fish, and on the top that's a hatchery fish. So we would be giving the upper fish over to CDFW, and they'll go in and they have a way to get that sliver out, and it'll tell what hatchery the fish was born in, when it was released into the wild, where it was released into the wild, a lot of different stats off of that little sliver.
Is it okay if I run the rest of the presentation? We're kind of running out of time.
Let's go on to do a Brian then. I think we're kind of running out of time.
So some of the things that we look for in the waterway is signs of digging for nests. So like we mentioned earlier, salmon have a specific way of making nests and laying eggs. They like to make basically, they mimic what happens in the chicken incubators. So a female salmon will dig a depression into a rocky riverbed, and then she will lay her eggs, and then after that she'll put more gravel and rocks on top of that. And this is always happening in a shallow area with a flowing water, basically a lot of flowing water. And as the water flows through the gaps of the little rocks, it basically spins the eggs around and keeps them at the optimal temperature until they're ready to hatch in 3 to 4 months. So,
this is something you'd be looking for if you're walking along the trail, and you see an area on the left there where you can see all those rocks are polished. There are rocks downstream and to the left in that picture, but they're kind of in the mud and the silt. But if you see something like that, you know that there are fish that are around. Typically, the males will spawn and go off, and then the female will stay on the way.
Here's some more examples of this. You can see, well, it's a little hard, obviously, but the inner area is a lot more clean than the other surrounding areas. And during this time, you'll see little pink streamers on trees and whatnot. That's to show that we've been there and we've marked that area, and it's in our database. Some of the other signs that we look for are carcasses. Like we said, we can only recover samples from the dead salmon. So once the salmon, hopefully they spawn, they expire, and we look for the carcasses. And this can be quite a challenge because other animals are way better at sniffing these fish out. So sometimes we'll get to a carcass and there's already turkey vultures or herons eating the fish, unfortunately. We also see a lot of imposter fish. So if you guys ever are on the waterway, you look down and you see a fish, you guys might see things like carp, the sacramento sucker, or other bass in the waterway. This is kind of what those imposter fish look like. This is what a salmon looks like. So some of the telltale signs in our waterways is that the salmon spins are a little more away, and you can see the underside, basically the white part of the fish. So that's one of the signs too that we look for. And again, poaching activity happens. As you asked earlier, it's not just the encampments that are doing this stuff, it's other people too.
The barrier up on the left, top left, that's Virginia Street on the Guadalupe, and they build boarded sections. These fish get in and they're basically trapped. So they would set it up, we'd come in and knock it down. 2 days later, come back, it's there again. And so it's just a constant battle. And you see that all along the waterway.
And this doesn't just look like trash. Like a big gravel barrier where it has little pools right there, and that basically makes it easy to steer or pick out the fish from the waterway. So we had an event at the beginning of October to remove this, so now that should be completely gone from the area. Again, it's a lot of work to do this cover. So this is our data collection tool. We use survey so whenever we look at something that we need to track, we'll put it into our phones, and then that'll get mapped out with ArcGIS onto our website. So if you go onto our website, you can actually interact with this, our maps here, and look at our progress as the year, or as the salmon season goes on. So,
We've got like 7 or 8 years of this data. So it's kind of cool with this map. We can click on this thing and look at each of the incidents. So is it a carcass? Was it a red? Was it live fish? And you're going to see how this thing will populate. But you can go in and see what's been happening with the waterways.
Cool.
Like to make a point, Oakland is doing a fantastic job right now for Reddit of community engagement on illegal dumping, waterways, and a whole lot of everything around there. And
So does that include like
taking a peek at is it's community involvement all the way through. It might be an interesting aspect to take a peek at.
Okay, so if you click on any of the blue dots, it'll basically pick out what we're recording that day. So this is, I think, a live fish. And you can go to almost anywhere on the map. Maybe just trying to find a fish here, actually.
the one to the right? There we go.
Okay, so yeah, we take pictures of the fish and we just try to document everything that we see.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. My bad. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and document all this stuff, and we'll basically anything that we see in the waterway will show up on here. You can follow our progress on our website this year, and like mentioned before, we try to bring the public out to go see the salmon spawning in the waterways. This is kind of predicated on the activity of the fish, whether the conditions are right. When do you think we might be putting the events out? Do you think it will be?
It's predicated on the fish.
Okay.
We don't want to go out and there's no fish, so. But it'll overlap over weekends, and it's not going to be this weekend coming up. It might be the weekend after, and then we might have 2 weeks where we can have people go out. But again, if you're walking along the trail, I would be looking down at the waterway. We've seen them at Blackford Elementary. Aaron saw a couple of them, and we've seen them down on the main stem of the Wad near Montague.
And then, so when we put the dates up, you can find that information on our social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, on our website, or through our newsletter. And if you want to send them through our newsletter, just leave us our email at one of the little sandwich sheets that we have in the back. But whether I'm also doing an activity where I will bring people that have waders. They will join me while walking in the creek. So if you have waders and you've been you are interested in that type of activity, please, I'll have a little sign-up sheet at the back where the little vehicle is. Leave your email there, and I'll send information about that event at the end of November. We basically just need waders and maybe 3 hours of free time to do this activity. So if you guys are interested, please join. This is basically wrapping up the presentation. I want to thank.
2 questions. Are there any sightings along the Penitentiary Creek? Penitentiary Creek.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been talking with the Valley Water biologist, and he was asking me where our fish were, where we were seeing fish. So we'll ping him and just see if he has seen anything.
My second question is, are salmon that are coming up, not necessarily when they're coming up, but are they safe to eat all year round? I would think if they're coming up, and it's liking and spirit,
Yeah.
they're ready to die, it's fine.
As they leave the saltwater and the freshwater, it's like a huge transformation time, and it really kind of just tears the fish up. They get like a white moss on them, and the flesh is, you know, if you cut into it, it's just mushy. So it's really not a desirable time at that point for, you know, to eat the fish.
Okay, so I want to say thank you
Do
to.
you do one all weekend?
I'll get to that. So I just want to say thank you for coming here, your patience. Also want to say thank you to any volunteers that come out to our events. We could not do this stuff without you guys. We have such a supportive community here in San Jose. And it's not just the volunteers that come up, but we also work with other organizations, schools, and other groups to get all this stuff done. And every year we give a award out. I didn't realize this is going on. There we go.
So one of the things that we do is each year we try and find someone who's been super helpful with this effort of, you know, going after the salmon. And this last year, unfortunately, our biologist, Brian Ali, who really kind of led the direction on, you know, connecting up with UC Davis and making some contacts. The gentleman had quite the pedigree too. He was actually, at one point, he ran the salmon spawning for all of Alaska, and then retired down to South Bay here, and our paths crossed and got to talking about fish. He was very passionate about the fish, and unfortunately, earlier this year he passed. So one of the things that we have is just this very eye under San Fernando Bridge, and he is sampling the fish, and I'm just taking notes there. But how do we go to the next slide here?
Oh, it'll end, the video will end, and there you go.
Okay, so let's go to the perpetual reward though. Yeah, so his name is going to be proudly displayed on this plaque. And that's one of my boots from walking the streams. I was feeling like, you know, it's getting very loose on my foot. So when we got out of the water, I realized that the sole had like popped. So there's a bit of humor there, but at the same time, you know, we want to recognize the work that he did and support what we're doing. It really advanced where we are now. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, Rick Landon was mentioning that one of the people that we're working with was at UC Davis and now is in Norway. He's working on a biology laboratory there. So this thing has taken on, you know, quite the scope. And so really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. You know, there's been some parts that probably were a little bit too technical, but at the same time, I think it's for everyone to sort of, you know, understand what's going on down here with our South Bay Creek. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Cool. Thank you.